Hi friends, hi family. I'm impressed to share a bit of my story with you. Depending on your context, you might want to call it a testimony. But before I get into that, I would like to thank so many of you who have been engaging with my content. I know I've spent a lot of time talking about the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa and the risks of health conditions. But today, I just want to spend some time thanking those of you for engaging with my content, for liking, for sharing, for following. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that we can have these types of conversations about health and the concerns that are on my heart, and that we can have meaningful dialogue and on how we can keep people safe. I just wanted to thank you. If you're new on this platform, I spend time just sharing information on health risks, risk of infectious diseases, challenges, what can impact our health, how we can make sure that we're protecting ourselves. And there are lots of people who are commenting, who are sending messages and so on. I want to let you know that I acknowledge you. I take the suggestions as best as possible. There's lots of suggestions and I hear you. I want to do a special shout out to Sister Zoe, who I call her in my mind, Sister Zarita, who keeps reaching out with words of encouragement and who asked me to shed some light on thyroid disease. And that inspired me to share my testimony with hyperthyroidism. So that's overproduction of the thyroid hormones. The thyroid is a gland in the base of our neck here. The main job of the thyroid gland is to control the speed of your metabolism, the process by which your body converts food into energy. And you would have heard me refer to the chemical reactions that are taking place in our body. And the thyroid hormone is responsible for regulating many of the chemical reactions in our body. So when we start to have thyroid issues, which can be so common and more common in women, then so many of our regulatory functions and our bodily functions are impacted by thyroid challenges. I am not intended to give any medical advice. I just wanted to share my testimony with us, my testimony with hyperthyroidism, which is where I ended up with an autoimmune, so my body fights against the thyroid. So I develop an antibody against my own thyroid, so anti-thyroid antibodies, and that leads to an overstimulation of my thyroid and the speeding up of my metabolic rate. If you've seen previous videos of mine, you'll realize that I had on lots more weight than I do today. That's because in a very short period of time, I lost lots of weight due to the speeding up of my metabolism. While I have naturally big eyes, sometimes you can actually see the bulging of my eyes. It's a little bit more bulgier than normal. And some other effects like the racing heartbeat. So many things had happened. You know why I continue to tell people that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine and a broken spirit dries the bones? It's because it's true. So I had a very crushing experience. I can't share the details of the experience with you because I would have said that I won't share them. But this experience is what I call spiritual trauma. And what it did was that it triggered an immune response. You know, your bone marrow is where you make your red blood cells. And so many things happen in your bone marrow, which is the seat of immunity. You make some of your white blood cells in your bone marrow as well. And there are naturally occurring processes that take place in our body to protect us, to keep us healthy and to keep us safe. And when I had that, what I call spiritual trauma, I struggled with that hurt. It was so deep, that hurt, that trauma, that it mounted a very strong immune response and it impacted my thyroid. Luckily, I always see blessings in challenges. So I've struggled with my weight my whole life. And so the blessing for this is that I got a jump start. So I lost over 40 pounds in like 6 weeks. And while I gained back a bunch of weight, I continued to work on the weight loss, because what this hyperthyroidism did was that, because the thyroid is an endocrine gland, as is the pancreas, which helps to facilitate your glucose control in your body, there's an interplay between your thyroid hormones and glucose management. And so initially I was diagnosed with hyperglycemia, which is high glucose, and was being managed for that. And the hyperthyroidism was overlooked a bit. Well, today I've been told that I don't have diabetes, and we need to just focus on the control, getting the thyroid hormones under control. I just want to say that there are two major types of thyroid disease: hypothyroidism, the underactive thyroid gland, and hyperthyroidism, which is the overactive thyroid gland. Generally, people who have an underactive thyroid gland, they're having a slow metabolism, and so they may find themselves gaining weight and having to take medication to stimulate the production of thyroid hormones to help in your metabolism. So many things can become off kilter in your body if we're having thyroid issues. Those with an underactive thyroid may have symptoms like slower than usual heart rate, feeling tired, unexplained weight gain, feeling sensitive to cold, dry skin, and dry and coarse hair. You can have a depressed mood. Again, your metabolism is slowed down, so is the movement of blood and so on through your system. If your heart rate is slow, so again, if your heart rate is slow, your blood is not being pumped as fast as it needs to be pumped, and so your oxygen carrying capacity can be lowered. So you end up with a depressed mood, can have heavy or prolonged menstrual periods. So those are some of the things that we might be grappling with. And women's health is so important, because we can get diagnosed with other things, because some of the symptoms of thyroid problems are common with other conditions. So the hyperthyroidism that I battle with leads to what we call tachycardia, or a faster than usual heart rate, difficulty sleeping, insomnia, unexplained weight loss, which, even though I enjoy the weight loss, it was not a healthy way to lose so much weight, feeling sensitive to heat, so hot, clammy or sweaty skin, feeling anxious, irritable or nervous, irregular menstrual cycle or amenorrhea, or a lack of periods. And both conditions, though, can cause an enlarged thyroid, what we call a goiter, where you can actually see it. I don't know if it's visible here today. The goiter is more prominent in hyperthyroidism. Some risk factors of thyroid disease include being female. Females are 5 to 8 times more likely to have a thyroid condition. If you have a family history of thyroid disease, if you have a condition called Turner syndrome, and if you take a medication that's high in iodine. So those of us with thyroid problems, it's best to use salt that hasn't been iodized, and we have to stay away from certain foods that are high in iodine. We have to be careful with the fish and anything that has been iodized. If you're older than 60, especially if you're female, and if you have received radiation therapy to your head or neck, those are risk factors for thyroid problems. Having an autoimmune disease also increases your risks. What my family physician said to me is that if you have an autoimmune, it can trigger other autoimmune disorders. And one of the reasons I keep saying a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, and a broken spirit dries the bones, and stress is a silent killer. Stress, any insults we can have, not when somebody says something bad to you now, but when you have any triggers, we can have an acute insult, or we can have multiple insults that pile on. These things can lead to autoimmune conditions as well. And these are some of the things that we're not being told when we end up with autoimmune conditions. Not only what we put into our bodies, but what we put into our spirits. These can feed ill health. So while we can talk about infectious diseases, we can talk about chronic diseases, and we can also talk about autoimmune diseases. You can end up in a state because the body is one being, and sometimes if we are hanging on to trauma or not processing our trauma, our bodies force us to process this trauma through physical ill health. And which is why I continue to say that we do have to take care of our mental health. And it's a topic that we need to focus on because it's important. Just some quick things that we can do as we live with these thyroid conditions. I have to come back and share the other portion of my testimony where I have to tell you how I got very, very ill, what happened, and also how I am able to be in a state of good health because of how my condition was spiritually addressed. And so spiritual help along with medical help is important. I just want to share 5 quick tips, some natural help for those who might be dealing with thyroid conditions. The first is dietary changes. I said it before. Selenium is one of the elements that we need. It's a micronutrient, and one of the things that has a high concentration of selenium, and I try to eat at least 6 Brazilian nuts every day to help with my thyroid. I also consume pumpkin seeds. So pumpkin seeds are high in zinc, which is another micronutrient, and that helps to support my thyroid function. Now, there are other herbal remedies that we can add to our diet. There's a tea that's sold in Costco. It's a turmeric-based tea. One of the packets has ashwagandha, and that's a herb that also helps with our thyroid functions. There's also guggul, and they help improve our thyroid hormone levels. Gut health is very important. We support our gut health by eating fiber-rich foods and considering probiotics, as a healthy gut is linked to thyroid function. I keep saying, folks, that we're whole beings. We can't take care of our stomachs and neglect our brains. We can't take care of our physical health and neglect our mental health. We can't take care of our mental health and neglect our emotional health. We can't take care of any of these without taking care of our spiritual health. Whether you're religious or not, we are also spiritual beings. And so we have to take care of our entire beings. Stress management, like I said, how I ended up with hyperthyroidism was due to spiritual trauma, an adverse event that affected me deeply and triggered a severe immune reaction that impacted my thyroid gland and caused my thyroid to become overactive. So I have to make sure that I'm reducing my stress so I don't end up with a flare. Another time, I'll have to give you the spiritual side of the testimony, but I wanted to just share some things, especially for Sister Zorita, who was asking about the thyroid hormone. So stress management, practice stress reducing techniques such as, for me, prayer and trust in God. Folks can meditate. You can do regular physical activity to help manage your thyroid health. So you'd have seen me walking on my treadmill. I have to build certain things in my lifestyle to make sure that I'm maintaining good health. And supplements are important. So you want to use vitamin D. The thing that my doctor, my specialist, my endocrinologist said to me is she wants me to increase my vitamin D intake. Apart from being a Black woman, where we run the risk, especially when we live in countries that have winter and we are not exposed to the sun, we run the risk of naturally having vitamin D deficiencies. So we, as Black people, have to increase our vitamin D levels. And she said to me that you don't generally get an overdose from vitamin D supplements, so I can increase them. But she told me the dose to you. So you have to talk to your medical doctor about how much of the supplements you ought to take, because our goal is not to be on any prescribed meds. And I'm doing very well with the spiritual as well as the physical management of my hyperthyroidism. thyroidism. But I was talking to you about the vitamin D and why she says that it's unlikely to get an overdose from vitamin D because it's metabolized and broken down very rapidly and you pass it out in your urine. So the toxicity that you would get from vitamin D is very low despite the dosages, but you still need to have your doctor talk to you based on your blood tests about the dosage of vitamin D that you should be taking. For those who live in tropical regions, you want to get the natural sun as best as possible. You want to avoid the midday sun, as they say, the 12 o'clock sun when it's directly overhead. And you do need to get sunlight. So shading yourself from the sun is not necessarily a good thing. Vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids also support your thyroid health. While these approaches can help manage your thyroid issues naturally, you do need to consult with a healthcare professional for personalized advice. I just wanted to share a few things. The thing I wanted to talk most about is our spiritual health. I just wanted to come on here and share this information because we have to take care of each other because we are our brother's keepers. A merry heart literally doeth good like a medicine because a broken spirit dries the bones. If each one takes care of the person in front of and beside him, everyone will be taken care of. I am Dr. Tamara, your online epidemiologist. Take care now. Blessings.